Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. Glad to have you back for another episode. Glad to have you here. Numbers are through the roof. Year's almost to an end. An amazing
Christmas
year.
week.
Christmas week. All right. Glad to have you here. Hopefully, even though it's Christmas, you're focused in. You're like, look, I'm trying to see the students. The serious students are watching right now. They're listening right now, right? It's like, I want to applaud you if you're listening the week of Christmas because you're finding a nerd time and you're saying, look, this is time I could use to grow. So
getting up early. You better go ahead and get tuned because you know you're already going to get up early on Friday. You know you're going to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning getting everything ready. So might as well throw on a little Christmas music, listen to, Eric serenade.
I would say like we should throw
podcast.
Yeah, we should throw we could have some music, some Christmas music in the background, and then it could be like
Christmas
music in the background. Cue Christmas music on the video. And then it'll be like Christmas feeling. Although some people will be listening to this ultimately in July, and then you have a summer Christmas. That's okay too.
Christmas in July. It works out perfect.
So here's what I want to talk about. So you and I were talking about this concept this morning. So sometimes what ends up happening is in business, we've got to dust off the greats, right? Mm-hmm. I always feel like that is something we have to do. And we have to be careful. Management changes over time, leadership changes over time, but there are certain things that are test the time. And I feel like this weekend I brushed off good to great. Like I brushed it off. It was time to brush it off. It's time to come back to one of the greats. And I was thinking about this as I had a client meeting last week, and so in Good to Great, we talk about Good to Great. We talk about some of the things. Now, those of you who've never read Good to Great, first of all, you're missing like one of the best business reads there ever was. So outside of Financial Evolution, no, I'm just kidding. No, it's a great book, and you really should read it. And because it was an empirical study done. Those of you who've never read it, for whatever reason, Jim Collins said, hey, look, we can do an empirical study and find out what made companies go from good to great. Mm-hmm. And what did they do? Because there had to be a difference between Eckerd's, who went out of business, and Walgreens, right? There had to be a difference between great companies and good companies. Yeah. And and by the way, most of the good companies didn't stand the test of time. Most of them are gone now. And so that's interesting, right? And so it's like if you read Good to Great, you start to see this. And one of the biggest things I say, Matthew, is that, one of the biggest mistakes you can make in business is to think like a small business, right? And we were talking about this morning about, this box, even Tower Leadership can be in a box. Like all companies can put themselves in a box, and challenging that box and what that box looks like. Because ultimately speaking, dental practices are stunted in growth by the business owner's mental state. People don't understand that, but it's true. So I want to pick out the 3 things. So in Good to Great, one of the things that Jim Collins said is that companies that were great had this hedgehog concept. Yeah. Which is the idea that basically once they picked these three core things, they made sure that they never wavered from them. So if you're driving, go back and watch this at home or find a place where you can take notes. But I want you to write these down if you can. And the first one was, what can we be the best in the world at? I want to stop there. Like, what can we be? You're talking about a visionary leader. So we don't think about this in the medical dental space, right? Yeah. Huge visionary leaders, and which is a huge mistake, by the way. I mean, there should be, by the way, if you want to take it there. By the way, there's visionary leaders within the dental industry. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But when we look at your own dental practice, we might even say, like, let's tweak that question for you really quick. What can we be the best in the industry at? So if you had a dental practice, so if I'm walking into your dental practice, we would want to say, like, what could we be the best of the best at, right? Yeah. And then go towards that and say. Yeah.
So we're the best at blank for a dental practice for the listeners.
So one of the biggest things that I think just blows my mind, it's actually one of the biggest ways, because I think the first thing we do is go back to clinical. Yeah. The problem is with clinical, it's hard for differentiation to truly happen. And the reason it's hard for differentiation to truly happen is because it's being a good dentist and a great dentist.
It's a preconceived notion.
I assume you're great or I wouldn't be going to you. I don't know that anybody goes to the good dentist or...
I think the marketplace kind of weeds those out too now because you would know if someone was a bad dentist.
And I think that people think, well, I'll add products, but it's like, no... you know, and it might be cultural. Like we could have the best culture in the industry. We could do things in a way that nobody else does to attract top talent. We attract talent like nobody else in the industry. Top people are attracted to our organization.
Should it be internal or external? So we are the best at. Should they focus more on like you're saying, team oriented side, or should they focus more on like externally how people perceive them as a dental practice rather than trying to attract talent?
Well, it will be, when we look at it, we start to say, why am I trying to attract top talent? Mm-hmm. It isn't so we just have a good culture. It's so ultimately speaking, for instance, part of Good to Great, one of the things they talk about is people having rigorous standards. So how is it that I attract people with rigorous standards who are hardworking towards those standards? Because then when I go back and I say, look, we want to have the absolute best dental experience. Forget all this stuff where somebody walks in the door, somebody grabs their hand, says, has anything changed in your paperwork? Forget that. How can we start all over again? Well, if the doctor's got to institute all that, it's never going to happen. So you have to say, do I have the team right now? So let's say you're doing $1.5 million in revenue.
Yeah.
And you say, I want to do 10 million in revenue, or hell, even 2 million or 3 million. Do I have the team with rigorous standards that are devoted to making sure that we are absolutely the best in the entire industry at experience? That I'm talking about nobody. Yeah. We could not find anybody in the entire dental industry doing it the way we did. And matter of fact, you say, well, I can't do that. That's what Apple did.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Apple did. I mean, Steve Jobs said, how do we create a user interface, an experience that's like nobody else's in the world?
Yeah.
And in fact, I mean, that was the problem with Microsoft. Microsoft did not have a clear, for instance, direction in that. What are we the best at? And if you look at the Microsoft years that Apple, let's say 2000 through 2015.
Yeah, that's about right.
That Microsoft got their ass whooped by Apple.
Yeah.
And Apple started dominating market share. What happened from, if you actually look at those years of Microsoft was trying to catch up with Apple. For instance, they created this amazing thing called a Zoom.
Yeah.
Remember that thing? That they were trying
to... They tried everything.
They tried everything to keep up. They were trying to... They got away from their core focus and what they're great at, right?
Yeah.
And so they stopped asking themselves a question, which is, at Microsoft, what can we be the best in the world at? Instead, they played the game of, what can we copy others at and try to compete in? That was where they got their butts whooped.
It's like Amazon and Walmart.
Yeah, I mean,
same situation.
There was no way that Microsoft was going to be Apple because they did not have Steve Jobs.
Yeah,
that's just a fact. Steve Jobs is one of the greatest minds as far as that in the world's ever seen. So it's like trying to copy Da Vinci. I mean, you're not going to get far. Yeah, it's just so go be great at what you're great at. So. Yeah. What will happen we start looking at the dental industry and start seeing changes in the dental industry, there is a notion of this idea of like, well, let me go copy what these people are doing. Instead of just saying, it's the same question, Matthew, where people say, okay, there's 10 dentists on a block. Can I compete in that space?
Yeah.
And I say, absolutely, all day you can kick their butts. And it's like, well, how can we kick their butts? Figure out what you're better than all of them at and go do that.
Because those 9 are probably doing the exact same thing as each other.
That's right. They're the same model. And then we start to go like, and instead of being like, then they'll start jumping after things we've talked about in this podcast with sleep dentistry, and we'll just try to shove implants, or we'll try to do this, we'll try to do that. What can you be the absolute, what would somebody get on a plane and fly across the nation to take a tour through your office?
Yeah.
Because they would say, this office is the best in the world at this. And let me give an example of what I mean by that. Let's just say you said something minute. We're going to be the best in the world at the phone call.
Yeah.
When somebody calls our office, there is nobody in the world who is going to compete and be able to handle the phones like that. I guarantee you that if an office literally just said, now there's a gazillion phone trainings out there, right? There's AI now that does it for you. But I would argue no one's saying, how do I become a master at that one thing? Because I will promise you, if you were a master at that one thing, your revenues would literally double. They would double. Because what would happen is people would start talking, and we could start actually doing that. Because then you go to question number two, which goes back into this, is what are we passionate about, right?
Yeah.
So the first question being, what can we be the best in the world or the best in the industry at? But I think it's got to be driven by, what are we passionate about? Yeah. So like what?
I almost think you should start there.
Right?
Like, what are we passionate about? And then figure out how you can be the best at it.
And that's where the problem comes, because I it's interesting. I was talking to a doctor recently, and he said, now this is his words, not mine, by the way, but he said, if you think about dentists by nature, we're kind of conservative. We went into dentistry because of the fact that we knew it was a career that we could make good money, okay? 150,000, 200, whatever. I can make good money in this career. It's not a lot of risk. Yeah. There's not a lot of risk to it.
Work 4 days a week.
And I can work 4 days a week. And it's great. So then we go back to like, what are we passionate about? And his statement to me was, dentists aren't really passionate about dentistry.
Yeah.
That there are some dentists, don't get me wrong, who are passionate. But the fact is that most dentists went into dentistry because they were conservative by nature, and they found a conservative approach. And that's why business consulting is so hard in the dental space, because dentists by nature are conservative.
It's hard to get them to do more.
That's right. If I go walk into a general entrepreneur and say, look, I need you to go spend an extra $10,000 a month in marketing, they go, okay.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. If you go to a dentist and you say, I want you to spend $1,000 more in marketing, they go, $1,000, right? So it's just more conservative by nature.
Why do you think they're more conservative? Like, if there was like a root cause of it. I know we spent a lot of time on the podcast about mindset and things like that, but do you think there's like a correlation, like you've seen this attribute that makes them conservative?
No, I think you can say that these are people who are highly analytical.
Yeah.
And people that are analytical tend to need more facts, and people that need more facts are more conservative, and then we get paralysis by analysis, which slows them down.
Yep.
Which, if you actually look at the dental space, the most successful clients and the most successful people tend to be quick starts. Tend to be people that can make actions. Tend to be people who can move, because I would say the industry attracts people that are more conservative by nature. And I don't think that's a good or bad. I just think it's true,
it's
right?
just how they're hardwired. I mean, like you said, fact finder.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's important to know, right? We often have to look at ourselves and say, look, I'm more conservative by nature. But then ultimately speaking, once we realize that, we go, okay, well, I'm conservative by nature. So then how do I understand that conservative approach and then still be able to get the business success I need? And so going back to that point of, hey, what am I passionate about? And sitting down with the team is a great time, end of the year, to go like, hey, team, what are we passionate about?
Yeah.
What do we love to do? That's why these mission statements of, these big, long, giant mission statements that are like, we are going to be the best in the dental community in the Land O'Lakes region it's not. It's interesting. I said to you and I were talking about this morning. I said to a team member, I said, what is our mission at Tyler Leadership? And he said, change lives. Isn't that simple enough, right? Because when this company was started, it was started with the idea of like, we can show business owners, and specifically dental business owners, how to take a business, grow it so they can impact their family lives, their growth and development, their community, and on and on and on. Well, so we get most pumped about the tears, the joy,
Successes.
the success, right? That's what gets us out of bed. So we're passionate about changing lives. We really are. And we've now, look at our team, Matthew. I mean, we've attracted a team of people who now are passionate about those things. And because they're passionate about those things, the people that are not passionate about changing lives won't last, right? So then we go back and say, okay, well, are you passionate? I'm going to start doing sleep dentistry. Are you passionate about dentistry? No, I'm not passionate about it at all. Okay, well then
you're not going to get out of bed to do it.
Then that's a problem ultimately, right? It's a problem in the fact of like, maybe that's why you haven't grown your practice. So find out what you're passionate about within your practice. Find out what it is that makes you passionate. Write down, if you sit down with a piece of paper and you can't write down, I'm passionate about this or I'm passionate about that within my practice, sell the damn thing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, go work for somebody else working 4 days a week and go find what you're passionate on. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I get a lot of calls when people say, I'm passionate about doing like high-end cases and being like a very sophisticated dental practice. And I say, so where are you at now? I'm not anywhere near that, but I want to get to that. Well, how do you change that quicker?
We want to be the best in the world. And by the way, I would argue that the people that are passionate about large cases can become the best in the world or in the class of the best in the world.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to, if you were that passionate about it, you'd figure it out. You'd figure it out. You'd be at course after course after course. You would be doing all kinds of studies and cases, and you might fly across the world to go meet with somebody who's the best in the industry at it. I mean, you would make it your forefront if you truly were passionate about sleep dentistry, for instance. If you're passionate about sleep dentistry, which I mean, hey, that's fine, but you better become the best in the world, and then get a team around you that's the best in the world and passionate about sleep dentistry. And as weird as that sounds, I remember. So I tell people like the first one of my first learning lessons. So I did like the opposite. I went in the military first, and then went to college. I don't know that was the most, but I was so passionate about joining the military that I signed up my 17th birthday because I always wanted to go. And when we look at it and say, like, when people get passionate about something, so what drives people's passion and motivation? Mm-hmm. I got out of the college. Where I was going with this was got out of college and I joined. There's a gentleman that was very charismatic, and I met him at University of Florida. And he said, come work with me, help me build something out. So I started working with him. Well, I'm in risk management as an underwriter now. I'm going to tell you, if anyone knows my personality, that's like a repeat. There's the 3 types of people: idea, execute, repeat. That's a repeat job. I hated it, right? And the day that I remember the day that I knew that I was not the right fit for that job, because I walked into my boss's office and she looked at me and she said, I am so passionate about this stuff. And I looked at her and I go, oh, are you serious? And she goes, yeah. I go, oh, I thought we were all doing this because we got paid a lot of money. Because I was making a crazy amount of money right out of college. And I was I figured that's why we were doing it, right? Yeah. And she was like, no, I love this stuff. And I quit like the next week. So I was like, okay.
This isn't the right fit for me.
Right? So you can find people that are passionate about sleep dentistry and passionate. But is that what you're going to be the best in the industry at? And here's the thing. If you say, well, no, then you've decided you're fine with being mediocre. Mm-hmm. If you look at this and you can literally listen to this podcast and go, we don't want to be the best in the world at anything. We just want to get by. Maybe this isn't the podcast for you. I'll be honest with you. I mean,
enjoy.
Because you're literally saying imagine looking at your kids, the person who listens to this and say, I'm not passionate about anything I do, and go, and say to your kids and go, well, here's the thing. I don't really care. Go through college, find something that'll pay the bills. Maybe you'll have some good vacations, but you won't be passionate about anything in life. Is that what you would educate and teach people? Or your kids, looking at your kids' eyes and go, well, I hope you can just pay your bills someday. I think that ultimately speaking, you have to
I feel like a lot of people do that, though.
I know. That's what I'm here to change lives, right? to change people's thought about that, because this idea of like waking up every day, white knuckling it to your office, dealing with all the crap you have to deal with as a business owner, the fluctuations, the up and down, the shutdowns, all the things that happen, and then not to be passionate about anything you do. Yeah. That's a tough road. I mean, I'm just saying there's a lot of other ways to make money out there. I mean,
I think there's a lot of our clients that get to that point too, where, you show them exactly what they can do with the dental practice, and then they can go start doing the stuff that they're passionate about. I think it's a happy medium where you get clients to a certain point where their dental practice is running by themselves, they're making a crazy amount of income, but then they can go do the outside adventures.
That's right.
And that's where the magic happens per se is, if you're in that position right now, if you're listening in and you're like, I'm just not passionate about what I'm doing, but I know that you can show them how to use their dental practice to get to where they're passionate about. A lot of times, business owners, you're probably thinking, all right, so I'm not passionate about what I'm doing right now. Where do I go from here? Well, let's fix your practice now, and then you can go be passionate about what we can utilize from the dental practice. And that's what you show doctors how to do, is use your dental practice to go do the other things that you're passionate about.
That's right. Because ultimately speaking, you got to find your passions and go, look at you, but you have an asset, which is a business. All businesses have to be managed.
Yeah.
All assets have to be managed. So then you go, okay, well, that's fine. Well, then let's go find out as a team what we're passionate about. Let's create a team around that. Maybe you'll find a doctor that's passionate about something, bring that doctor in, and then still do that same thing as saying in that business model, even if you don't want to be there because you want to go become the next great American novelist, whatever, that's fine. But then you better make sure that the company is focused on what they can be the best in the industry at.
Yep.
And by the way, you don't have to say best in the world right now. You don't even have to say best in the industry. Hell, you can say best in
your
my
area.
city. Yeah, best in my. But how can we like? Here's the thing to do. Like, go freaking take one of your team members and have them walk around to all the dental offices and pose as a patient. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Like I would. I'm just saying. People go, well, I wouldn't do that to my peers. I would do it. I'm just telling you. I'd want to know how my experience compares. I would want to know. Like, how do I compare? One day I just started calling. So here's the interesting part about. So I did this one day. This is how people don't even know what's happening in their marketplace. So I called to ask if people were out of network because I was trying to do some price surveys in an area for a client one day. And so I got some pricing. So I would ask, hey, what do you charge for a crown and those types of things? And then I saw some of the prices were so low. And then I asked them if they were contracted. And then they said no, and I was like, you might as well be contracted because your
You're not
fees
charging
are
anything.
your fees are so below what the UCRs are in an area that doesn't make sense. So I want to know in an area how I'm doing, but you could say, how do we become the best in our city, the best in our area right now?
Yeah.
And what are we passionate about? And then what economic indicator do we want to focus on? Number 3, what economic indicator do we want to focus on? Because here's what this is almost makes me mad at this point. In the industry, it's like grow.
Profit.
Do you have any idea how many people that have 2-3 locations that their business is a damn mess? And the only reason they got 2 locations anyhow is so they can tell all their dental buddies, I've got 2 locations.
They have 2 locations.
Now, I'm a big fan of multiple locations. I'm fine with that, but it's got to be done right. And so what I coach
I asked a gentleman yesterday who called in. He was like, I want to get from 2 practices to 10 practices. I said, why? He couldn't give me an answer.
Yeah, exactly.
He was just, it's like, it's what I want to do. It's how you grow. Is you do that. I was like, well, that's not exactly all you have to do to grow. I mean, there's a lot of other areas, but why? And he's like, and then, I don't know.
And then what is the strategic criteria around that practice? By the way, I was just talking to a doctor 3 weeks ago. We were talking about through an acquisition. I was like, this acquisition was going to take $1.2 million of capital, and yet only yield $120,000 after debt service for $1.2 million of their capital. And I was basically showing them another way that they could literally net like $385 using the same capital. So you're going like 3 times as much return on the same capital. If they had let emotion take over and then used emotion, then ultimately that could throw them off. So what ends up happening is when we actually think through things, we go, there's got to be a strategic plan around that growth. So when we start looking at this, we start to say, what strategic indicator do I need to be focused on? And maybe it's as simple as this. It can be as simple as this. The number of patients served. The number of patients served. Because think about this for a second. If I looked at my community and I said, if I knew my average revenue per patient per visit, and then I said, I looked at last year and we saw 5,000 people. How would we get to 8,000? Because we're serving people in our community. How would we go from 5,000 to 8,000? If we use that as our indicator, watch what would happen to revenues. Watch what happened to the need then to open up capacity through a different location to grow. When we start actually looking at this and going, you're probably measuring the damn wrong indicator. And then you go back and tell your team, hey, we're trying to go from $2 million to $6 million. And they think you made $6 million. And then when they go back and ask for a quarter raise, you go, I can't afford a quarter.
Because you're like, I'm focusing on profit. And that's going to mess up my profit margins.
So the key indicator, so here's the question for you. What key economic indicator should you focus on? Now, remember, this is not Eric Morin here. This is Jim Collins. And I'm telling you, like, this is just me even going from a fundamental mindset. I go, hey, when we go to 2021, What are we going to get our team focused around being the best in the industry at, the best in our community at, the best in the world at? What could we say is we do better than anybody else? And then we're going to use that. We're going to put it everywhere, and it's going to be our core focus of the business, the core focus. Then we say, okay, that's probably driven by what we're passionate about. So what are we passionate about? Because if we start following a hollow number that we don't care about or a hollow mission, we're not going to get there because nobody cares.
No one's going to be motivated.
And then how would we measure that to see if we're doing it successfully? Yeah. So what could be the measure? So let me go back to my example again and say we're going to be the best in the entire area. So I'm going to just take our community has 2 million people in it. Yep. We're going to be the best in this area at patient experience. I'm just using that as experience.
Yep.
We're going to figure out what everyone's doing, and we're going to do the complete opposite. We're going to create an experience that people will go write about, talk about. We're going to be the best in the industry because we are passionate about changing the way people see the dental office, changing the way that people experience the dental visit. I mean, we are going to diagnose every damn piece of it. I'm talking about the way people sit down in a chair, what they look at in the chair, what we talk about, the communications, the phone call, what happens when they walk in the door, what happens when they leave, what happens before they ever show up. We're going to rip that apart because we're passionate about it. And the key economic indicator is to see if we're doing a great job is the number of referrals or number of new patients seen or whatever the number we want to focus on.
It could be reviews. It could be anything.
Yeah, and then we go, well, that's our key, and then we do not change. Yeah. Because if you want to compete against a 40 dental practice chain, they're not going to do it. They're not going to put the time into experience like that. They're not going to. They're going to be, because a lot of these companies, what they're trying to do is get themselves positioned to sell. To get themselves positioned to sell, they're focused on EBITDA, ultimately profitability. They want to have the profitability because they're going to sell the company, this 20 chain, for some multiple of EBITDA. So when you get what you measure is what I always say. So what ends up happening is you're never going to get there, because what ends up happening is you start to go, yeah, we could give a better experience, but ultimately speaking, we're not trying to keep this thing anyhow. Yeah. So we're just trying to get the earnings up so that we can which means little investment in team and training and those types of things. We can get rid of this thing. So ultimately speaking, you can whoop their butts, and it doesn't really matter if they set up shop across the street. Somebody asked me recently, like how is it that I took a practice that was struggling because a chain moved across the street, and then we ended up dominating the chain? Well, we ended up dominating the chain because we were willing to do what they weren't willing to do. It's pretty simple. So, and then when you get there, a great question is who, not what. Yeah. Who, not what. And what I mean by that is, who do we need to have on our team to make sure this gets implemented? Because if ultimately you say, I'll do it all, not going to get done. It's not going to happen. Yeah. It's not going to happen. So,
and it goes down to the concept too that's like kind of correlates with it that you've said all the time on the podcast and through client workshops is organizational ceiling.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do we raise that? Because
right?
You'll figure out pretty quickly if you have the right, if your organizational ceiling is capped by going through this, and then you say, all right, in order to get from 1.5 to 2.5, our organizational ceiling needs to go up just by doing these things.
That's right. See, the great companies, when Jim Collins studied the great companies, here's what he said. They refused to hire people that did not fit just because they needed a position. They relentlessly refused to hire somebody, even though they were desperate for a position to be filled, if they did not meet the criteria of the who, of what the person they needed to get them to the next level. Dental offices need to listen to that advice.
Yeah, they do the opposite.
They do the exact opposite. They go, oh God, we need someone up front. Hold on, she's got a pulse, she's got a heartbeat. Yeah. Get her in here and just tell her, we'll call her a receptionist.
Yeah.
And then we'll wonder why she's confused about what she's supposed to be
doing. And I think that's one of the things that, COVID had its downsides, but I think one of the positive sides is, when we did our foundation a couple weeks ago, we had people say, one thing that we got out of this was the team. We got awesome team members out of this. Like, we looked at it and they got rid of the people that were not on board and brought on new team members that are hungry, humble, smart, ready to get after it, are passionate about what they're trying to do, and then take them to that next level to raise the organizational ceiling. So I thought that was a good point when they were talking about that is, sometimes things happen for us, not to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately speaking, things happen for us always. And you have to look at that and say, ultimately, how do I grow from that? And then how do I start to grow? We start to focus on this, moving to the place of like wanting to grow 10 times, wanting to grow this organization, and then focusing on these key things. And I think this podcast could not be more timely. What's happened with this podcast, which is, by the way, thank you all of you that are listening. What's happening with this podcast is it's changing people. And I'm glad it is, because, one of the things that listeners don't know, but Matthew tells people, go listen to the podcast. And it's interesting what they come back with once they've listened to it and go, my gosh, there's a better way to do this. Yes, there's a better way to do this. Now, ultimately speaking, one of the reasons you sign up with Tower Leadership, because we're going to show you the how, exactly why to implement all this. Like, so it's okay, how do I get all this done? So that's what we teach at Tower Leadership. And by the way, you might have a company that does some portion of this. It won't do all of what we do, but it'll do some portion of this maybe. But ultimately speaking, we look at this, and this podcast serves as that. So think about it like this for a moment. It's the end of the year. It's the end of by the way, don't tell yourself it's a crappy year. If I hear one more person complain about 2020, stop it. Like, that is the worst thing you could possibly do. Like, don't fall in with the sheep. Like be a lion. Like, be the person who's like, no, it was an amazing year, and here's why. Even if you fell on your damn face and you struggle with capital and you struggle with, then go, what
keep
did I
that in
learn?
mind when you go to the 2021. There's gonna be a lot of virtual dental conventions. There's gonna be a lot of people like giving you reasons to think that you're okay because you had a crappy year. There's gonna be a bunch of people like, oh yeah, it's okay, COVID. It's okay, it's COVID. No, you need to take that to heart and be like, what do I need to do differently so that I don't do this again?
Yeah, I mean, great point. Do not by any means, in any way say that I'm okay with it being a mediocre year because of the COVID. That is bullshit. It is.
Because it affected everybody else. Like, that's okay because everybody else.
It's just not true. It's not true that COVID affected everyone negatively. It's just not true.
Yeah.
That's a lie. It's a lie people tell themselves, and a story that they've created. Because remember, once you create a story in your head, you will go find people to confirm your story.
Yep.
So once you've decided 2020 was a bad year, you will go find people that come around you and then say, now here's how this story will go. I'll role play with you, Matthew. Here's how it sounds. Like, here's my like role play. I'll put my eyeglasses on. So here's my role play on this, right? I'll go, Matthew, we'll call you Dr. Maffei. Here we go, right? So Dr. Maffei. Dr. Maffei, if you think about it, one of the things is, like, this was a bad year for everybody. And we all had to shut down for those 2 months.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, I was doing so well. You were probably doing well too.
Yeah.
But I shut down for those few months. And gosh, we lost some good people because of that. And if I had those team members, I can't wait for this year to be over, because I'm telling you right now, we were going to do so well. And
it's March in 2021, and I'm still recovering from, I'm still trying to get my team together because I lost so many people, and then the second wave hit.
Let's go find some more people who also believe that this was, because I was talking to Dr. Fred and he agreed, and Dr. Smith and he agreed.
Our virtual study club, they were talking about it.
We all said this was the worst year ever, and that we were all good until COVID.
Yeah.
And gosh, I just hope next year that the vaccine will come out, and it's all a lie. It's all a lie. It's all a lie that's used by people who are okay being mediocre, saying, hey, look, because we all had the same circumstances. That's the thing, is we all had the same circumstances. But then why do I have clients who are doing crazy awesome things in 2020, doubling their business, tripling their business in 2020? If that's true, then you don't have an excuse.
Yeah.
And it's not from one part of the country. It's from all parts of the country. So then ultimately speaking, what we do is we shed that lie and we go, look, it's a lie that I'm telling myself. And then I go get 10 of my friends who also believe that lie to confirm my lie, so that I'll feel good about myself and say, no, I failed. By the way, you might have failed in 2020 in the fact of you didn't reach your expectations. But then you go, but it isn't a failure unless I let it get me down. What did I learn in 2020 that will make me better in 2021? Because everything is for you.
Yeah.
So if it's for you, then you go, okay, this is for me. Man, I bumbled in this year. Man, I failed this year. I didn't have a tower leadership, or I didn't have any coaching. I didn't have the right team around me.
I got rid of everybody.
Whatever it was, like I needed. If when someone tells me they sat on the couch for 2 months, it makes me angrier than I can even imagine, because I'm like, that is the craziest thing that I can imagine. I cannot imagine the idea of sitting on the couch when my business is struggling. There is no flipping way that I would sit on the couch and watch TV and watch Tiger King or whatever? Like that doesn't even like make sense to me. So I'm not beating up on anybody, but I'm also not here to be your best friend either. I'm here to tell you the truth. And the truth is that if you're going to create a compelling vision and by the way, great companies create a compelling vision, and it's built around this idea of being the best in the industry, best in the world, best in your market. And then you share that vision, you get passionate about, like I am right now talking about vision, and then we look at the chief economic indicators. I cannot say that today. Economic indicators. And then I get my team on board and I go, okay, who, not what? I got to get my team on board. And then I look at 2021, I go, do I have the team? And if I don't, I go get them. I go look at my rigorous standards. I say, I got to go build this. What an amazing time to be listening to this podcast, because ultimately speaking, you listen to this podcast and go, I've got work to do, because here's why. Because you listen to this podcast, this is being released the week of Christmas, right?
Yep. Gives you 2 weeks.
I'm going to tell you the vast majority of your peers are asleep at the wheel. They're asleep. They're laying down and they're going, forget it. Yep. I just hope that I have
2 weeks are done.
It's over. I'm going to have some cocktails and smoke a cigar and wait until the new year comes. Well, that's a foolish mentality, and it's not the mentality of someone who should be listening to this podcast. And the idea is, as a lion, how do I hunt when the rest of the sheep sleep? Because I'm telling you, they're gonna go to sleep, and they're sleeping right now. And now's the time in your business model that you say, economically and every other way, how do I take advantage of 2021? Because they're still asleep. I'm getting riled up today.
Well, people are gonna go to sleep again. I mean, we don't know what's gonna happen, and if January is a great month, you need to make every single month with the mindset of going into it that this needs to be my best month ever.
Well, and that's why I teach the rolling 12, because the rolling 12 doesn't allow you to have a bad month. Yeah. If you're using a 12-month calendar year and you're like, the problem with that is it lets you out. You can go, if you have a bad January, go, I got 11 months to make it up. If you use a rolling 12, you can never have a bad month. That's the whole thing, is that ultimately your valuation, and I want you to hear me on this podcast. If your revenues go down for 1 month, your valuation, your net worth just went down. I'm telling you, you just hurt your valuation of a company. I don't want to have months where I depreciate my asset.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. We have to keep going up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And if you don't know how to do that, that's the best time to pick up a phone call, because you've got to get up and so we've got to do better next month than we did this month. And how do I do that? It is not okay to go, well, it's September and January and
these are always
if you've had a slow September for the last 14 years, get off your ass and do something in July to fix your September. We don't wait until I gotta calm down today. I'm fired up. But it's like this stuff's it's like because I want to shake people and go, do not wait until September to fix September. You should have been fixing it in July and getting ready when your revenues are high, because people are out of school and they're coming to your dental practice and your revenues are high. June, July tend to be high months. Use that capital to reinvest and make sure that September doesn't go down. We look at this. Now, what's going to get you out of bed then? Then know, hey, we are going to be the best. I want anyone listening to this podcast. We're on minute 40 here.
Yeah.
Okay. We're starting to wrap this up. Be here for an hour and a half.
We can keep going.
So I want you to ask yourself a question. What am I passionate about? I'm looking at my business and say, first I want you to look in the business and say, what in my business would drive passion, drive energy? And then I'm going to ask myself, how could we be the best in my area at that? First, just start with your area first.
Yeah.
And then what chief economic, indicator can I focus on to make sure that I hit that we're measuring it correctly? And then what team do I need around me to implement and make it happen? Forget who's on my team now. What team, one of the greatest piece of advice is that hire for the future, not for today.
Yeah.
What team do I need around me to make sure I get there? If you'll focus on that, and I'll say one more thing about the team. I wrote down in my journal here, I've got my journal that I write notes in, I've got it in all bold caps. The right people in the right place are the foundation of greatness. The right people in the right place are the foundation of greatness. So once you understand those things, ask if you have the right people and are they in the right place. And if you go sit down and journal and create a plan, go get with your team at the beginning of this year or before the year starts, huddle up with them, spend a day, spend half a day, take them to lunch, and get drilled in for 2021. Follow these, and I'm telling you, it will make all the difference in the direction that you take the year. Guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.